How to spend minimum money on your clothes and still look very fashionable for Indians. Think of today's video as a budget dressing for India specifically. Now, before we get to the actual tips when it comes to budget dressing, there's a few ground rules that you need to know. Firstly, if you want to really look great, you need to understand color science, how to match your t-shirts with your pants. And I've made a full video covering that topic exactly. And the second very important thing you need to know is that in today's video, I'm going to be talking about a lot of different brands, but none of those are product placements. I'm not making a single rupee off this video. And you also need to understand that a lot of my brand recommendations are just me talking as your big brother in fashion. So without wasting any more time, let's get to it. Tip number 1, smart wardrobe creation. If you want to create a really fantastic, fashionable looking wardrobe, it doesn't happen in one shot. You got to create it over time. You need to buy pieces of clothing at certain points. The golden rule of shopping that I believe in is that if you want to save money, only shop during sales. Now, the gorgeous thing about living in 2017 is that online stores like Myntra, Flipkart, Amazon are actually competing with the outlet stores and the malls. So how do they compete with each other? They both put discounts. Always shop during sale season only. You need to remember that at certain points in the year, there are these sales in malls, online, everywhere. You need to look out for those certain times in the year. What are those times? The end of June, beginning of July, end of Jan, beginning of Feb, and very importantly also around public holidays like the Independence Day weekend or the Republic Day weekend or Diwali or Eid. You'll always find that a lot of malls as well as online retail stores have insane discounts on their products. Now, the issue with sales is that yes, there are a lot of options and sometimes all the clothes that they're selling in the sales might not be great, but you might find those 1 or 2 pieces of clothing that are standout pieces. And that's all you need to create a very fashionable wardrobe. So during a sale, just look for those standout pieces and go and save up to 40 to 50% on the actual marked price of the product. The other point that I'd highly recommend is that if you go to a brand you like and they have some kind of a membership scheme where you can subscribe to a newsletter, do that. If you do that, you're emailed about sales prior to when they happen. Tip number 2, online shopping. And I'm not just talking about the big websites. You gotta understand that there's a lot of great brands out there that can't afford to be on a big website and they can't afford their own outlet stores. So you're getting fantastic clothes online for a great price at a discount, but on smaller websites. I will list some of my favorite websites in the description below, but for now you need to remember that a lot of guys are afraid of shopping online because they're afraid that the size of clothes might not be accurate according to their own body type. The great thing about shopping online is that it's a very competitive sector. So the websites you shop from readily exchange clothes and all that. It's just about trial and error. Be open to shopping online because sometimes even like big brands are listed at a much lower price online than they are in their actual outlet stores. Tip number 3, we're talking about export reject products. What does this mean? So a lot of big brands all over the world, the biggest brands have their manufacturing facilities in smaller countries like India, China, Thailand, Indonesia. And a lot of times when clothes are manufactured in bulk, some of those pieces of clothing have some kind of small faults in them. Either thread will be sticking out or the wrong color thread will be used in a small part of that clothing or the collar won't be perfect. Basically a very small mistake in that piece of clothing. So when those clothes are manufactured, the brand rejects some of those pieces. And where do those pieces go? They're sold again in those countries. So there's actually certain countries like Thailand where you'll get export reject stores all over the country. There's insane shopping because the quality of those clothes is just like that of the international brands. Yes, it might have 1 or 2 faults, but sometimes those faults are so small that you can actually look past them and those clothes will still look fashionable. But more importantly, because they're from such high-end brands, they last you for like almost 4-5 years. That's why get serious about buying from export reject stores. Now, when it comes to India, what you need to remember is that in every metro at least, there's a lot of export reject stores. Be it Delhi, be it Bombay, Calcutta, Bangalore. All you need to do is do a little bit of research, ask around, figure out where the export reject store is and go shop there. Don't be afraid to buy these products. They're fantastic in quality and they look great. Tip number 4, we're talking about packs of clothing. What do I mean by this? Again, the great thing about shopping online is that there are brands like Roadster, like Free Culture and Marks and Spencer's that actually sell these packs of 2 or 3 shirts for the price of 1. So you'll get like 3 great V-necks for just about 700 rupees. That's a little more than 200 rupees for each of those V-necks. And in a lot of cases, those individual pieces of clothing last forever. So it's a great investment, especially for everyday casuals. Now the great thing about buying these packs of 2 or 3 is that in a lot of cases, the fitting is absolutely perfect. And very importantly, you're getting a lot of variety for the same fit. So if you land up buying a product of a brand whose fit you really like, you have more options in terms of color, and they're very, very budget friendly. That's the whole point of having packs of 2 or packs of 3. Don't be afraid of buying these products. Tip number 5, we're talking about washing science. That's something that a lot of Indians look past. You need to remember that the golden rule is that look at the label. It usually says machine wash only or hand wash only, and that says a lot about that piece of clothing. Follow those rules, they're there for a reason. Secondly, if you're washing a new piece of clothing and if you're supposed to wash it by hand, don't use a clothing brush. It can absolutely ruin the texture of that piece of clothing. Also remember, if you're drying out a piece of clothing and if it's new and if it's a gentle piece of cloth, don't twist it. That twisting motion might help in drying it out easily, but it can absolutely ruin that piece of clothing and make a new piece of clothing look old. Instead, if you want to dry out a piece of clothing, gently squeeze out the water from it. Also, when it comes to colored clothing, after it's washed, make sure you don't dry it out in the sun. If you dry it out in the sun, the clothes get bleached and the color kind of just leaves those clothes very easily. So if you want to make your clothes look new for a long period, just be smart about washing, especially when it comes to detergents. Tip number 6 is investing in a mild detergent and using that mild detergent to wash new clothes especially. Remember, the more you wash a piece of clothing, the faster you're taking it towards its death. You can only wear a piece of clothing outside if it's looking new. And if you keep washing it with your regular harsh detergent, you're gonna take your piece of clothing to its death very easily. You can counter that, at least initially, when the piece of clothing is very new, by using a detergent like Easy. Not a product placement, but you need to remember that something like Easy increases the life of a piece of clothing. It increases how long you can wear that piece of clothing outside your house if you go for a party or a function. And that's very important if you want to be looking sharp at all times. So especially if you've just bought a certain t-shirt or a shirt that you like a lot and you don't want it to wear out very easily, initially wash it with Easy for the first 5 to 10 washes. Even with Easy, obviously the clothes will get worn out after some time, but again, compared to a harsh detergent, Easy does the job. Tip number 7, we're talking about clothing hacks. Once again, if you have a piece of clothing that's new and you don't want to wash it, even if you don't want to wash it with a mild detergent, what you can do is, say you wear it on a Friday night and you want to wear it on the Saturday as well. So what you can do is that after you come back home, you got to understand that your clothes are covered a little bit in sweat. So you can just turn them inside out, spray a little bit of cologne on them and leave them out to dry, to be aired by the fan. Switch on the fan, leave them under the fan, take them the next morning and you'll see that a lot of that smell of your sweat has just vanished. That's a hack in keeping clothes fresh once again. As good as a mild detergent is, remember, even that kind of wears out a cloth's life. And your job is to extend that life of that piece of clothing as much as you can. So dry it out. That's what you can do for something like shirts or t-shirts. But something like jeans, another cool clothing hack is that if you want to remove the smell of sweat, what you can do is that you can take a sweaty pair of jeans, put it in a plastic bag and then put that plastic bag in your freezer overnight. The freezer sucks out all the odors from that pair of jeans and you're left with an almost fresh pair of jeans. Once again, great for removing odors. And the other thing with jeans is that you want to wear it for as long as possible. So don't wash it till at least a month. You can do this again and again every time it starts smelling a lot. That's how you keep your jeans fresh. Tip number 8, short and simple. Find yourself a tailor and get into a habit of stitching clothes. It's a little extra effort, but you're saving a lot of money. Take up a store like Zara. You'll see that a lot of pants there are sold for like 4,000, 5,000 rupees. You can recreate those pants if you live in a metro. How do you do that? Firstly, you go to your local cloth market and buy a piece of cloth for about 400 or 500 rupees. take it to a good tailor. As I've said earlier, your tailor needs to be your best friend. Go to a good tailor who knows your measurements, knows the way you like wearing your clothes, and get some pants stitched. This applies to shirts as well. It's a great alternative to actually going to branded stores and buying their branded clothes and spending all that money. You're saving almost 75% of the price by just taking a little bit of extra effort, going to your cloth market and taking that cloth and going to your tailor. Keep that in mind. Tip number 9, the shoe life and price problem. What do I mean by this? A lot of guys won't invest in an expensive piece of footwear because they'll think that it's too much money to spend. But the issue with buying shoes in India is that the cheaper shoes wear out very fast. So if you buy a piece of footwear for say like 1000 to 1200 rupees, there's a good chance that it might wear out in 5 to 10 wears. But if instead of that 1000 rupee shoe, if you go and buy a slightly more expensive, say 2000 or 2500 rupee shoe, it's gonna last you a lot longer. So at the end of the day, you've got to figure your own priorities. If you're gonna buy a cheap piece of footwear, it's gonna get worn out very fast and you need to be aware of that. But there's also exceptions. For example, these gorgeous boots that I bought from Roadster for about 1200 rupees. Once again, not a product placement, just a great product that your big brother is recommending to you. Remember, shoes are a very important piece of clothing. It's probably even more important than your pant and your shirt. So try finding these brands like Roadster that make these amazing shoes for very cheap. But also keep in mind, once in a while, you do want to invest a little bit in good quality shoes. They say a lot about your overall outfit. And finally, coming to shoe care, very crucial. Number one rule is that you go and buy shoe trees. These are these little objects that you can put inside your shoe to prevent it from bending and losing shape. Secondly, if you're wearing loafers, go and buy yourself loafer socks. Very important, keeping your shoes fresh for a long time. Thirdly, this kind of material, this smooth velvety material is called suede. You don't want to wear suede outside if you're going to be running around or even if you're going out in the rains. That completely ruins your suede. Remember, if it's the monsoons, you don't want to be wearing leather, you don't want to be wearing suede. What you can do is that you can wear cloth shoes, but for your cloth shoes, you can just rub candle on top of them. It kind of makes the shoe waterproof. So that was the top 10 points when it comes to budget dressing in India. There's a lot more where this came from. So I'd love to hear what you guys thought of today's video and your video recommendations. Remember, my Instagram handle is @beerbiceps, and if you want to learn more about basic everyday fashion, go and check out the men's style playlist on Beer Biceps. Make sure you subscribe, and from Ranveer, I will see you later.